Hi everyone, and I'm back again, and we have a little bit of review. We're going to talk about file management. How does computers organize data? I heard somebody once said, you know somebody understands about computers if they can tell you where their data actually is, where it's actually stored. Alright, so let's just do a little review. We're not going to review all the other parts this time. Bits and bytes. Remember, storage. You'll see me draw things like this. This would be a platter. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. Somewhere's on there we put the ones and zeros when we store them, and we measure that in bytes, how many bytes we hold. Bits per second. Type of files. When we store files, we have data files, and then we have software files, the actual programs. Both of those need to be stored somewhere. And we're going to learn that there's a variety of places that they exist, okay, but both need to be stored. An example would be you might have a word processing software. That would be the instructions that manage your word processor. That has to be stored somewhere. And then that word processor, as you use it and create a document, with all your stuff on there and maybe graphics and all that, that is your data file. Okay? So they both need to be stored. So when you look at files that are stored on a computer, they're typically one or two of those two things. So if you have music, you have the file that actually has the ones and zeros that represent the music, and then that has to be then brought into some piece of software, whatever that might be, the instructions that will actually play the music. So if your word processor is Microsoft Office, it will store this data file in some form that matches Microsoft Office, and then it'll have that extension. Alright, where do we store files? Okay, let's take a look here. I'm going to move this up. It's right there. Okay. Storage of files. We can store files on a hard disk or a platter. Most of those are stored magnetically. You have a round platter and you put the information, the ones and zeros are stored on there magnetically. We can store it on a DVD and a DVD disc, and it will actually burn spots in the disc to represent the ones and zeros. And then we have this new technology called flash, and later on we'll talk about solid state hard drives. Right now most people think of flash, think of a flash drive that you can store information on. Flash is pretty cool. All of these store the information, and you can take the power away from them and the information still remains there stored. So you might want to think here of a thumb drive that you might put into a computer. Now, the general location of where they are. We'll use the term local storage. So if you have, let's say, a PC, and the PC has a hard drive in it, you can store the stuff right there, and we'd say that's local to the machine. So a lot of times computers come with a hard drive, a platter, disk in there that spin, and you can put the information on there. Laptops nowadays, they don't have to, but a lot of laptops have a hard drive. Now your phone can store information, but typically your phone is storing it in flash. Okay? Your phone is storing it in flash. Alright, now here at the college we have network storage. So somewhere at the college is a server that has a large storage space, and then via the network you can be on your laptop and you can send the information through the network to the server. And a lot of times they'll give that server, they'll give it some letter, like they'll call it the I drive or the N drive or whatever. Okay? Typically a local storage on your computer is typically the C drive. That's getting a little bit outdated, but a lot of times it still is. Okay? So you can store it on LAN on some network storage. So it's not in your computer, but it's stored on a local area network. Nowadays, it's extremely popular to store it in the cloud. You can access some storage place via the internet. So if your laptop or your phone is connected to the internet, then off the internet you can use some type of cloud storage. And what could those be? I use Google a lot. Google Drive, iCloud, through Apple, Dropbox. I use Dropbox to store information. And all of them would allow you to access them, some via the internet, some ways via the internet. Now, to organize our files, we usually put them in folders. A little bit older term is directory, and we're going to use both of them during this course. And you can use them interchangeably, okay? You know, whether you call it folders or directories. You can we use a hierarchical design, and you can take and make subfolders under folders. Okay? And then you can have a hierarchy. So you can have a folder, and then inside that folder have a subfolder and a subfolder in there. So you can organize things that way. You know, a lot of websites do that. They'll have a subfolder for images. Okay, and they'll put all the images in a subfolder and then access them. In order to access them, we call that a path. You would give the path from the hierarchy, the highest folder, and then you'd work your way on down subfolders. Okay? We should be able to, and we'll have some assignments, you should be able to create, copy, move, and delete folders, and do the same thing for files. Know where your files are located. Are they located in the cloud, on a local machine, and so forth. So, let's use an example. If you have your files stored on your local machine, so you have a desktop computer and it has a hard drive. This would all, I'm going to draw that later on, they might all be in the same box, or your hard drive could be external, could have an external hard drive. Now, if something happened to this, you know, Lord, hope not, but your files could be gone. So most people take and store their files somewhere else. Now, like for example, I just showed you could store it on an external hard drive. You could burn them on DVDs, or nowadays what's really popular, if you're connected to a network, you can store them on the network, on some storage in the network. And now that network could be a LAN, a local area network, or it could be further away out in some cloud like we talked about earlier. So we have, as an example, we have a device. Maybe that's a phone, and then maybe this is a laptop. We can connect those to in a local area network. Those can be connected, could be wireless, or it could be a direct connection, to some networking devices and have in here a server that actually stores our information. So we could store it there. Or, like I talked about before, if this is the internet out here, there are services out there on the internet in which you go here to an ISP, and they have an ISP, and you're able to go there and use their storage. And what storage would they have? Well, they may have platters and store it magnetically, or they may have solid state, but more than likely they're storing it magnetically on platters. And that's it for this one.